Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 363. Well, this article we're going to talk about tonight, folks, is going to enrage a whole lot of you. Of that, I am sure. Now, a little background. We know that one of the core four was suing the Epstein estate, saying that she was also a victim. Now, when you add up all of the information that we had available to us, and again, just the information that is available publicly, and you look at the ages and time frames, it's obvious that the person who was suing Jeffrey Epstein and claiming victimhood was Sarah Kellen Vickers, one of the main members of the Core Four. Ghislaine Maxwell's chief lieutenant is claiming that she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's and that she was abused and coerced, and basically he had mind control over her and put her in the position that she was in, and she was forced into that position because of his extreme power. And while that is an argument that I would be sympathetic of, right, if the other pieces would make sense, such as after Jeffrey Epstein gets arrested, why didn't she come forward then? Why did she wait until now, until the heat is really on her, until she knows that the non-prosecution agreement might be going to the wayside? If you were abused by Jeffrey Epstein like this, the way she is claiming, then you would think that you would have wanted to see him behind bars for the rest of his life after that first time around. You wouldn't be part of the non-prosecution agreement, right? I mean, I get it, Stockholm Syndrome and all of that jazz. I am certainly not a psychologist, and I can only offer my opinion in this situation, just like in other situations. And for me, I don't really buy this story by, we'll call her Jane Doe for now, but all of the circumstantial evidence obviously adds up to it being Sarah Kellen Vickers, I would think. And the fact that she's claiming to be a victim here, considering the depth of the evidence against her as being part of not only the grooming process, but participating in some cases, she's going to have to come with a lot more than that, right? It is not I don't think this is going to work out for her. I don't think that she's going to be able to avoid the criminal side of this, no matter what happens civilly. And again, speculation on my part, it could simply be she is doing this to try and fortify herself for a criminal case to set the tone, right? If she gets a payout from the estate, she can use that to beef up her own defense that she was also a victim, right? So that could definitely be a strategy that they're looking at. Who knows, right? Who knows what's going on with these lawyers and what sort of backroom, manipulating and high wire act is taking place. But to me personally, I find this obscene that this person would think that she's going to get a payout from the same people that she helped abuse. It's just, I don't understand how it could even be a conversation, right? And it all goes back to the original deal, the non-prosecution agreement. If that was never put into place, and these four girls, the core four, weren't named in the non-prosecution agreement, this could have all been rectified a very long time ago. And that's why I think one of the most crucial points of this case is coming up on December 3rd. I think that is going to be a real fulcrum in this case, and it's going to really dictate how things move forward. So I really hope that the December 3rd hearing in front of the 11th Circuit renders all of this kind of stuff moot. Because if the NPA goes out the window, then it doesn't matter what sort of defense she's going to use here, claiming that she's a victim as well, or any of that other stuff. A jury of her peers is going to see through it, and she's not going to escape punishment here, I don't think, in my opinion anyway. Does she maybe roll over on Maxwell? I don't know. She's had all this time to come forward, and she hasn't done so. And for me, that's a big red flag. A huge red flag. You would think that if you were being manipulated into a situation the way that she claims that she was, that when Epstein was put behind bars, she would come forward and help bolster the case against him to ensure that he never gets out of prison again. But instead, she kept her pleasant relationship with him. She kept working out of the apartment that was provided for her. All of that stuff cannot be overlooked. So she's going to have an uphill battle when it comes to trying to wriggle out of this, and the audacity and the gall it takes to try and get money out of this victims compensation fund is just, I don't even know what to say about it. It's gross, right? I don't even know. Sheesh. All right, so let's jump into this article. This article is from OK Magazine. Headline, Jeffrey Epstein recruiter set to get payout from Victim Relief Fund. This article was authored by Chris Spargo. A Jane Doe who was 22 when she met Epstein is suing the estate. So you look at the numbers. Who was 22 when they met Epstein, according to the reports, right? Not Marcinkova. Not Adriana Ross, not Leslie Groff. That just leaves us with one person, correct? This article is by Chris Spargo, who once again is ahead of things. A woman who helped recruit underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein has been approved to submit her claims to the Victim Compensation Program after claiming she was trafficked and raped for over a decade. So she has been approved to submit her claims to the fund. That doesn't mean that they're going to approve dispersal of funds, though. Is it possible that they do? Look, again, I'm very cynical about the whole process at this point, and it would just be par for the course if they did distribute money to this person, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if they do. Should they? Absolutely not. The woman in question filed a lawsuit under the pseudonym Jane Doe back in March. Then, on November 2nd, her court case against Epstein's estate and its executors was put on hold as her lawyers informed the judge that their client was seeking a payout from the Victims Compensation Program. This was all approved by the executor of Epstein's estate, Darren Indyke, who was named defendant in the case. And again, here is a huge problem in my opinion. From my vantage point of not being a legal expert anyway, I don't see how Darren Indyke or Khan can be the executors of this estate when they're named as co-conspirators by several different people. How does that jive? How does that work? How is there no conflict of interest? And is it a shock that Indyke and Khan would approve something like this if it would take some of the heat off of them perhaps? They worked with the Core Four for all of those years very closely. So it's not like this is somebody they don't know. It is a very odd situation to me that Indyke and Khan would still be executors of this estate considering their vast involvement. There is no name given and no address, but the timeline provided by Jane Doe matches up with one of Epstein's co-conspirators. Her March complaint states, Jane Doe seeks justice for the sexual crimes perpetrated against her by Jeffrey Epstein over the course of many years, and for the abuse, manipulation, and exploitation she suffered at his hands. So, again, when you look at the timeline, you look at all of the other information that we have, and you start going through the list of who it can't be, you're only left with Sarah Kellen Vickers here, folks. And it looks like Sarah Kellen Vickers is all in. She just pushed all her chips to the middle of the table, and she's rolling with this "she was a victim" routine and defense. Now, I don't know how the prosecutors are going to look at this, but if it was me, well, she'd be in for a long day. And there is no excuse for her not coming forward after Epstein was arrested the first time or the second time, in my opinion. Huge red flag. If you worked for somebody or you were put to some sort of servitude by somebody and they were finally in the hands of the authorities the second time around, I mean, the first time around, I guess you could say, all right, well, he was very powerful, I was scared, but the second time around, there's just no excuse the second time around, in my opinion. I think that if you're in that situation where supposedly all of this was happening, you wouldn't be benefiting still years after the man was arrested, years after you supposedly had no relationship with him anymore, still benefiting from your relationship that you had with him, so according to you previously. It just does not add up to somebody who was abused in the manner that she's saying she was abused. Now, am I saying that Jeffrey Epstein didn't have some sort of control over her? No, I'm not saying that at all. He was the one who was providing the money and the lifestyle, and all of that is, it becomes infectious, right? These people get a little taste of it and they want more. So she was in love with the lifestyle. She didn't want it to go away. She went in with both eyes open, and she knew that what she was doing as far as recruiting and grooming and all of this other jazz to help progress Jeffrey Epstein's proclivities and his disgusting behavior, she knew it was all wrong, and she engaged in it anyway for self-benefit. And now, when all of the cards are tumbling down, she's throwing up the Hail Mary here, hoping beyond hope that she'll get some empathy from some quarter. Well, I'll tell you what, I highly doubt the survivors who were abused by Epstein, who were never part of his cabal. I have a funny feeling they're not going to be too happy with the fact that one of the core four, looking like Sarah Kellen Vickers, obviously, according to the data that's available to us, has applied to the Victims Fund and might get a payout. Now, is it certain she'll get paid out? No, of course not. We have to make sure that, we don't get too carried away until there's information saying that she does. All of it's up in the air. We don't know what way things are going to turn in this case. There's ups, there's downs, there's corkscrews, there's twists, there's turns, and there's flips. Each day we get up, and you never know what you're going to see. When I look at the news, who the hell knows what you're going to see? Maybe you're going to see mass indictments, or maybe you're going to see that, Ghislaine Maxwell is out of jail now because of the coronavirus. Who the hell knows anymore? All we can do is strap our goggles on, swim upriver, through the muck, and try and find some clean water. The lawsuit is about Jane Doe claiming her power, becoming a survivor, not a victim, and getting restitution for the sexual crimes perpetrated against her. Jane Doe then identifies herself as a co-conspirator in the complaint while listing the damages she has suffered because of her ties to Epstein. Her capacity to pursue a professional career has been severely compromised. Well, you were working with Epstein. What do you expect? Again, she's using the premise that she was coerced into this, forced into this. And while it is a try that I guess she has to make to try and make sure she doesn't go to prison the rest of her life, I don't think that this is going to be received by empathetic ears. Her name and reputation has been ruined, and she is virtually bankrupt, having been forced to spend most of her resources defending herself against false accusations, all of which stem from Epstein's crimes. Then why doesn't she sue some of these people who have alleged this against her? Some of the girls who have pointed the finger at her, sue them for defamation. Get it into the courts if that's the case, if you've been defamed so badly. But you notice these people never do that? She does. She knows that she's not, that these claims have, they're credible. They have credibility. She knows that she worked for Jeffrey Epstein. And this is according to all of the reports, according to the police report. That's what we're going by when we're talking about the core four. At least I am. You know, I'm not here just pulling shit off of a blog somewhere and, running off with it. This is actually stuff out of the police report. They're named in that non-prosecution agreement. Why would Sarah Kellen be named in the non-prosecution agreement if she was also a victim? Don't you think that she would have been running to Chief Ryder's office, bawling, screaming, and telling them what was occurring? Or maybe she really loved that life and she knew exactly what she was up to and she didn't care as long as she was benefiting from it personally. Of the 4 co-conspirators identified by federal prosecutors in Florida, 2 would have been much younger than 22 in 2001 when Jane Doe met Epstein, while 1 was much older at the time. The youngest, Nadia Marcinkova, was just 14 or 15 and living with Epstein around this time, while Adriana Muchinska did not start working for Epstein until the following year. Leslie Groff would have been 34 years old in 2001. Only one other person of interest was named in that investigation, and that is Sarah Kellen Vickers, folks. That's where we're at. That's what we're talking about in this complaint. And it is, I'll tell you, I just don't, I think it's obscene, the whole entire move here, the whole try here, and I really hope that the court looks on it the same way. The complaint is chilling in that it reveals Epstein's predatory behaviors were constant. He also did not seek consent according to the initial filing. Jane Doe's lawyers write, so in the complaint that Sarah Kellen Vickers turned into the court, or we'll say Jane Doe 1 here, turned into the court in March, she spoke about the supposed abuse that she received at the hands of Epstein. Now, again, we're talking about somebody who was a sycophant of Jeffrey Epstein, a complete believer in the whole entire operation according to eyewitness reports and accounts. Somebody who had ample chances to go to the authorities after the fact. Somebody who could have stopped this at any time. Now she is saying that she was also a victim more than a decade after the fact, after she's been on the non-prosecution agreement. But now, when the heat is being turned up and the frying pan is starting to warm under her feet, well, all of a sudden, she is now also a victim. Very interesting strategy, folks. 19. Jeffrey Epstein specifically targeted underprivileged, emotionally vulnerable, and or economically disadvantaged young females exactly like plaintiff to sexually molest and abuse. So, yeah, that was the strategy, no doubt. But your client was engaged in that very same strategy. She was victimizing these other girls from these schools, according to reports, and partaking in the abuse, according to some of the girls. So, yeah, she would have a very intimate knowledge about what Jeffrey Epstein was looking for, considering she was taking part. 20. Epstein's continuous psychological and physical control over Jane Doe facilitated his sexual abuse of her on a relatively consistent basis for many years. Well, again, why didn't she come forward when her name was being put on that non-prosecution agreement, when there was a real serious chance that Epstein could have went to jail for the rest of his life, when Chief Ryder was engaged in the investigation, when they had all sorts of federal charges drawn up for Epstein? Why didn't Sarah, Kellen, Vickers come forward and tell the prosecutors what these girls are saying is true? You're going to have to be the judge of that, folks. You know, we all have our opinions, I guess, and my opinion is it's because she was a true believer in what they were doing. She was a believer in Epstein, she was a believer in Maxwell, and most importantly, she was a believer in boosting herself up the ladder and being part of what she was in love with, so-called polite society. The sexual abuse took many forms, including Epstein's rape of plaintiff. Now, look, I don't think that raping anyone is okay, right? And if she was raped by Epstein, well, it's absolutely disgusting to even think about, that this monster was doing that as well to even his, people like Vickers, right? But the fact of the matter remains that Vickers played a crucial part in abusing other people. Just because you're abused or allegedly abused doesn't give you the right to ape that behavior and abuse other people. While I feel empathy for people like that, no doubt about it, you still have to suffer the consequences of your actions. And that goes doubly for people who don't come forward and talk to the authorities and try and help all of the other people who were victimized, right? You were around. If you were older than a lot of these girls, you were being victimized yourself. Epstein goes to jail, or the authorities finally start investigating him. You don't go on the low to talk to them. You don't go and talk to them hushed. Of course you do. If you really feel like your life's in jeopardy and you're being abused this way, several chances she let go. And not only that, she was also still benefiting financially from her relationship with Epstein. So it's not like somebody who was, living completely and shuttered in a basement or anything like that. She had ample opportunity to get away from him. Look how Virginia got away into Thailand. So, again, I know that Jeffrey Epstein was a sick bastard and he abused, like I said last night, probably hundreds of women and girls. But this defense by Jane Doe 1 here is not really going to cut it, I don't think. I think people are going to see through it, and I think people are going to punch a bunch of holes in it. He would also enter Jane Doe's room and get into her bed while she was sleeping, and then fondle or penetrate her with his fingers. This occurred often and repeatedly. He often directed her to undress and pose in certain ways and or touch him and herself while he masturbated. This occurred often and repeatedly. Epstein frequently directed Jane Doe to turn her head back during their sexual encounters, telling her that he did not want to see her face. Epstein also repeatedly required Jane Doe to bathe with him and perform oral sex on him. This occurred in New York, Palm Beach, New Mexico, London, Paris, on Epstein's private island, on Epstein's airplanes, and other locations. 27. Jane Doe was paid in part to be sexually available to Epstein. So that's part of the defense too. They're saying that Epstein was paying her, but it was only paying her for the sex. It wasn't paying her for her role within the criminal enterprise or the procurement or grooming of young women. Now, $250,000 is what these gals were getting paid as assistants. And we know that that's about 3 or 4 times more than assistants were making on Wall Street. So I doubt it was just for sex, considering all of the women he had available to him, and women that were much younger than Jane Doe here. Okay? And we know that Jeffrey Epstein likes them much younger and likes them to look much younger. Now, again, I'm not denying that any sort of sexual encounters took place between Epstein and this alleged victim here. Maybe they did. I don't know. I have no idea. But I know for a fact that there are more than a handful of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and this criminal enterprise that point the finger directly at Jane Doe 1 / Sarah Kellen Vickers and the Core 4. So, again, we're the public, right? We're all going to have our opinions on this. At the end of the day, it's going to be for the courts to decide. And hopefully the courts will be able to see through the BS and they'll decide in the right fashion, and this person will not get one single dollar from this survivor's fund. This argument may very well hold up in court and get Jane Doe a payout, but it will likely not go down well with the other survivors, some of whom have named Epstein's recruiters in their lawsuits. The fact that this alleged victim, spent over a decade working for Epstein could also hinder her case. Exactly what I was talking about. When you've been working for Epstein for so long and you have a track record of being one of his lieutenants, the jury's going to look at all of that. They're going to take all of it into account. And I don't see how she or her lawyers will be able to convince a jury of her peers in a criminal case, mind you, that she was a victim here and not an abuser. So there you have it, folks. Jane Doe 1, which looks like it is Sarah Kellen Vickers, is applied to the Survivors Fund, looking to get a payout, and saying that she too was a victim. I will leave it up to all of you to decide what you think about that kind of statement. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow morning for our usual morning update, and we'll see what sort of weird and wild nonsense awaits us.